Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mini Scroll, the daily internet culture podcast bringing you the biggest stories from social media, the creator economy, and the digital space every Monday through Thursday. I'm your host, Lauren Meisner, the founder of the youth digital media brand, Centennial World. Welcome back to Mini Scroll, everyone. Okay, so today was a bit of a light news day because obviously the TikTok ban, Trump's inauguration, like those two things are just absolutely consuming the news right now. So I thought I would give a bit of a content recap. I haven't done this. I don't even know if I did it at all last year, but Jordy and I used to do a content recap sometimes every single week of like the things we were watching and loving. And I am so in the weeds of good content right now. So I wanted to talk about two things that I watched over the weekend. I do have two other stories at the end. So if you guys don't care about what I'm watching and my opinions on it, then that's fine. Skip ahead. There are always timestamps in the description. But yes, so Severance is the first thing I want to talk about, and Molly-Mae's documentary as well. This is your disclaimer. Spoilers ahead for Severance episode 1, season 2. This is literally my favorite show of all time. I have been waiting for it to come back. This and Yellow Jackets, waiting for these shows to come back. Episode 1 of season 2, Severance, did not disappoint. So I wanted to share some of my theories. Okay, right. So the episode starts, Mark basically comes to after swapping places with his Audi. He was screaming, "She's alive," referring to Gemma, who's his wife in the outside world / like Miss Casey. He is told that it's been 5 months since the innies basically got out and like infiltrated the Audi world. And he also was told that the innies are now heroes. So I don't think either of these things are true. I think it's very obvious that the innies are probably not heroes on the outside world because the photo that Mark has shown as evidence of that is so clearly photoshopped. And it also seems to be photoshopped from like an iconic photo. Like the photo itself looks photoshopped, first of all, but then it's photoshopped onto what seems to be this iconic photo of US President Eisenhower in Brazil from 1960. So I'm gonna say that that photo in general, that like newspaper, is completely fake. I also don't think it's 5 months after because, first of all, Miss Huang, who I'm going to talk about in a minute, says it's her first day on the job. And Milchick has so clearly just taken over from Miss Cobell. There's kind of evidence all over the office that she is not fully like gone yet and he has not fully had the like changing of the guards. The biggest one being that he looks at his computer and it just says Miss Cobell on it still. I did see some people think that they possibly were transferred to Lumen somewhere else. Like the innies were taken to a different Lumen in like a different country or something to kind of punish them for what they did. By now, I would love to hear what you guys think Lumen is doing. So I think it's very clear that they are doing something related to water. The theme of water is all over this show, and Lumen's like logo or whatever is basically a big water drop. I'm going to say water is involved, and it seems like consciousness is probably involved. I'm assuming this all has something to do with bringing Kier Egan back or like doing something so that the Egans can basically like live forever. I know one of the main theories is that MDR could be categorizing, like the work that they do at MDR is like categorizing information from consciousness into the 4 tempers that Kier Egan discovered, which is woe, frolic, dread, and malice. And if you look at the buckets that MDR filters its data, like, you know, the numbers and they dance and they're like, you just have to look at the scary ones. And when you see the scary ones, you filter them into a bucket. So those buckets have letters on them and they align with woe, frolic, dread, and malice. So it's almost like being severed is maybe the only way that someone can identify the correct information, because when you're severed, you're essentially a blank slate, right? It's maybe that having too much consciousness impacts your ability to filter out the data that like quote unquote like looks scary. And I know there's lots of theories about like cloning and stuff. I actually don't think cloning is involved. Maybe it's involved in the greater picture, but I don't think that they are like solely trying to clone people. Okay, so back to this episode, the other points. I definitely think that Dylan is being manipulated by Milchick. I think either they're not actually building this family and friends room and he's being told they are for obviously manipulation tactics, or they actually are and they will bring in his quote unquote wife and it, will not actually be his wife. I think Miss Huang is maybe the same vibe as Miss Casey, which is like both of them are possibly deceased in the outie world, but Lumen has created them on the inside. I don't think that this necessarily has to do with cloning, but maybe it does. I don't know. I mean, it's also possible that Miss Casey's body and Miss Huang's body are actually their bodies, like Gemma's body, but Miss Casey is not Gemma because it's not her consciousness. I saw people say that Miss Huang is a clone of Gemma's young self, or that she is an older person that has been uploaded into a younger body. Okay, and of course, the final one is that Helly is actually Helena? Is it Helena in the, I don't know, I can't remember how they say her name. It's Helena Egan, yeah. I know this theory has been around since the trailer, but I actually did not know that theory. And my brother and I were watching it, he didn't know it either, and we both were like, I don't think that's Helly. And then we were looking it up and everyone's like, yeah, we've been thinking this since the trailer. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So I think that I don't think they made it like super obvious, but I think there are some indicators. Obviously she lied about her outside experience. And I just think like Helly wouldn't lie about that. I think she would just be so honest regardless of the fact finding out she's an Egan, like she would be like, holy shit, this is crazy. This is what I found out, and like, how can we use this now? She notes seeing a gardener at night, which Irving clocks as weird. First of all, a gardener, that gives rich vibes. That gives somebody who thinks that there's just gardeners around all the time. At night is even weirder. So yeah, Irving's like, that's weird. She seems to fish for information from her colleagues a lot. And there are several moments where it seems like she just like isn't quite herself. I know the one that people are saying is the most telling is when she has to like look for the computer switch. It's like all the innies do is sit at their computers all day. They don't even leave that room. That's literally their whole existence. They are on that computer all day. They turn that computer on every single day. It is literally all they do is sit in that room on that computer. So like, yeah, you would know where that button was to turn on your computer. I also just think like Helena, like why would she ever let Helly go back inside after what she did? She would never trust her again. And then I saw this on a thread online and I didn't independently verify this, but apparently in season 1, episode 9, Cobell told Helly at the gala when she finds out what's happening that if she went through with the plan to expose Lumen on stage, she'd be long gone, but her friends would suffer. And so people are like, that was foreshadowing. Helly is long gone. And Helena is there to make the friends suffer. Oh, also, I wanted to read this comment on YouTube that I saw. Somebody was trying to explain like what MDR is doing. So they said they're actually sorting fragments of consciousness. The emotional trauma makes them better at recognizing/sorting pieces of consciousness from people they deeply loved and lost. This explains why they need humans to do this seemingly arbitrary task. Machines can't replicate the emotional recognition. Okay, and for Molly-Mae's documentary, I also watched the first 3 episodes. It's not done yet. There's only 3 episodes out. But I really enjoyed it. I don't know. I really like Molly-Mae. Everybody likes Molly-Mae. I was going to say, I know that's not unique. That's why she is like so beloved. Like she is like Britain's sweetheart, it seems. I don't know what it is about her, but I do just really like her. I like that they're addressing things really quickly. Like I think next episode they address the fact that there was rumors that she and Tommy kissed on New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve was like 3 weeks ago. So I think like truly in the scheme of like reality TV, how instant this is really awesome. And I think it's really unique. I think in general, it's funny whenever we see these documentaries about famous people because I find they're all kind of the same. Like whether it's a mainstream celebrity, an influencer, like whatever it is, the documentary, like the through line or like the theme is always the same. Like, be careful what you wish for. Being famous is not all that it's chalked up to be. It really is the same story over and over again. It's like all of these famous people in these like ginormous houses or like are surrounded by teams of people. And the famous person, the talent, the influencer has anxiety, depression, social phobia. They hate being famous. And I think it's like twofold. I think partly we see that because that is probably what being massively famous actually turns you into. Like, I imagine the emotional and mental health toll of being famous would be almost unbearable sometimes. So I think it's partly the product of that. And then I also think that it is partly kind of the style of documentary where it's like the purpose of these documentaries is to humanize them and to make us empathize with them and to like hear their quote unquote side of the story. Okay, let's get into the stories for today. I mean, those were kind of stories, but there were slim pickings for like news. So the first story that I have for you guys is that Kendrick Lamar has saved TikTok. This is like a new kind of like low-key trend online. My brother actually came to me last night and he was asking why everyone online, like on his side of the internet, on Reddit, whatever he frequents, was saying that Kendrick Lamar saved TikTok. He was like, what did he do? Why is everyone saying that? And I was like, what? So anyways, obviously I looked into it. It is a joke, of course, and as many trends that we see online, it is kind of hard to trace like where this started or where it came from. But essentially, after TikTok was reinstated in the US, users started thanking Kendrick Lamar for saving the app. There's a bunch of posts replacing Donald Trump's name with Kendrick Lamar. On Reddit, people are like, we can't let Trump get credit for this. Obviously, it's kind of like an in-joke online. But I think the way that users are responding to this is even funnier. So someone will post like, oh, thank you, Kendrick. You saved TikTok, whatever. They're like, how? Because he saved it. It's so good. It's so funny. That's one of my favorite things about TikTok is it takes these chronically online in-jokes that previously were just kind of like secluded to smaller communities or like closed communities, like niches, whether it be like Stan Twitter or like a Discord channel or a YouTuber's, I don't know, fan base, whatever it is. And it kind of brings it more to the mainstream and it allows more people to participate in something like this. And yeah, it's just like funny. Like this is literally like one of the best parts about the internet. So if you see people thanking Kendrick Lamar, at least today, that's why. Because he saved TikTok. Okay, the last story that I wanted to talk about, again, like I said, I'm sorry, it was slim pickings. I forgot to talk about how David Dobrik returned back to YouTube after a 3-year hiatus following his cancellation and Jeff Wittick's accident. So this happened over the break while I was off, but David returned with a video documenting his physical transformation from what he says is his body after he like quote unquote let himself go to being now really fit. The video also features him taking a trip around the world with friends, a cameo from Mr. Beast, and David surprising his employees at Dobrik's Pizza with new Teslas. A very David Dobrik vlog. The video was really well received. This is like why I wanted to talk about it. Like he came back, which I think was kind of surprising to people. He's obviously not been offline, right? We've talked about how he has primarily been posting on Snapchat. He did his podcast and then he kind of stopped that. And then Snapchat was like his main platform. But what's interesting is he returned and he returned at a time when like there was just chaos culturally, chaos in the US, so much stuff going on online that him returning almost got like swept under the rug. I don't need to go into like why David was run off YouTube. I've talked about this a million times and I'm sure all of you guys listening know the whole story. But I would say that this was a pretty strong return, all things considered. So Trisha Paytas and Tana Mojo discussed his return on a new episode of their podcast, Not Loveline. And they called him out for gallivanting across the world and releasing his vlog before paying Jeff back for his surgeries and obviously all the damage that was caused in the excavator accident. But yeah, like I would say the most kind of negative quote unquote feedback that I have seen overwhelmingly was just people joking that like he doesn't have the face that matches a body that hot, basically. And that's like a nice compliment. And Tana said in this clip too on Loveline, but she was like, this just proves that like no one is truly canceled. I mean, rich for Tana to say. I think David is incredibly nostalgic for so many people. And I also think his cancellation, there was so much that happened around it. And like we were reporting on it when it happened. And even for me, like there were so many, I mean, and this just happens with online cancellations, but like there's one big allegation that kind of opens a can of worms, right? And that can of worms, so many worms pop out and it's like overwhelming that you almost like forget what happened and like why, because there are so many allegations swirling around. And so the two main things obviously are the insider article and then Jeff's excavator accident. And so I think because David faced backlash for so long because it started with the article and then obviously Jeff's excavator accident, and now there's been so much around that accident, so many allegations that Jeff has made, there's this lawsuit, like all these things. It's almost too much that it feels overwhelming for people to like pinpoint like why he was quote unquote canceled. And therefore I feel like sometimes that's what makes it easier for people to just like, for these creators or celebrities or whatever, to come out unscathed. I'm sure there's a psychological term for this. I'm sure that this is like a real thing in psychology, but like, yeah, when there's too much information, it becomes overwhelming. There's too much information and it like drowns itself out almost. So anyways, I guess David's back to vlogging. So it kind of feels like we've been transported back in time. Anyways, guys, that's it for Mini Scroll today. I'm sorry that today was kind of random. Please rate, review, and subscribe if you like this episode, if you like this podcast. Please rate us on Spotify. We are trying to get to 1,000 star ratings on Spotify. I love you guys, and I will talk to you on Thursday. Okay, bye.